Hello and welcome to VST Presents the Sports Telegram. We've got an exciting one for you guys today. Kenny and I are going to be breaking down the division series in baseball playoffs. The wild card is over. We know who's in. We've got the 8 teams that are going to be battling out for the Commissioner's Trophy, and it is exciting. Real quick before we get into it, Kenny, how you doing this morning?
Man, I'm doing great, man. Listen, it's that time of year. There are certain times of year as a sportsman you get excited. That early spring when you got the NCAA and you've got NBA is getting ready to roll in the playoffs, and then you got baseball starting up. But this is sort of my favorite time of year when we get into the fall. Football's going, college football's going. And now you got the baseball playoffs, and we're rolling towards the Fall Classic, and I'm ready to get into it.
Let's do it without delay. I'll break down the American League first, and then we'll jump into the National League. All of these series start on Saturday, and it's just a day full of baseball. And if you're a college football fan, well, you got 2 things to go. But we'll roll right in. The first game of the DS is the Rangers at the Orioles. The Rangers, what can we say? They took care of business in the wild card, and now they're facing the number 1 seed Orioles. It is an exciting matchup. The Orioles probably don't know they weren't supposed to be here yet, and the Rangers have been trying to build this for a couple years. I was skeptical after they dismissed the manager, but here they are. Next up, you've got the Twins and Astros. They are the second game of the day. Twins held on in their division, and the Astros kind of came through at the end. It was a tight race at the top of the AL West. They had the tiebreaker with the Rangers, and here they are hosting in the DS. Interesting side note here is Carlos Correa is going back to Houston. See how that wears out. First National League game, the Phillies are at the Braves. This isn't just that. This is also a division rival. They've been battling it out all year, and they're gonna go again for a few more games. We'll see how that goes. And the final game of the evening, another division matchup in the DS, the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers. I will get into much more depth on this, but this one is either going to be really interesting or it's going to be really quick. Kenny, what are your quick thoughts looking at the schedule?
I expect all of these series to be competitive. I think there are some interesting storylines and some interesting juxtapositions with some of these teams in the postseason. I mean, we know who the favorites are, especially when you look on the National League side. You've got 3 teams that we've become very familiar with being in these positions when the fall season comes, when the postseason rolls around. And then you got a new kid on the block that's kind of sort of trying to break through. And on the American League side, you've got 2 teams that this is their first foray. We haven't seen them make deep runs in the postseason in close to a decade. And we've also we've got a couple of teams that we're familiar with their names around postseason, and we'll see if they can continue to kind of get it done. So it's exciting. Let's jump into these series.
All right, let's jump in. I'm going to jump in the same way we introduced them. We'll start chronologically, first game to the nightcap. So Rangers at Orioles. This one is the 2 newcomers you were just talking about. The Rangers, like I said, they've been trying to build this team together for a couple years. They went out and added Corey Seager. They've been flirting with trying to pull Kershaw away every offseason the last couple years. They added a couple arms. but even that looks a little shaky now. Having shut down their big deadline acquisition. And the Orioles, you said it when we were off camera. They just kept plugging pieces in, and these pieces fit seamlessly, and they just kept chugging away throughout the year. And they took advantage of the chinks. And I'm going to use your phrase. They took advantage of the chinks in the Tampa Bay Rays armor and took the division from them. This is a young team, and they're exciting to watch. For me, it's something we talked about off air. Is the moment going to be too big for them? And are they going to be able to step up and take care of it? And that's going to be a question for them every single round if they keep advancing. DS is the first real test for them. And then you got the championship series. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, though. So is this moment going to be there? It's a big moment for the franchise. And flipping back to the Rangers, same question. They haven't been postseason relevant in a while. They had some dugout shakeups, firing the manager last season. And, they were for a moment looking like they might challenge to take the AL West. Ultimately ended up in the wild card. So how do they respond? How is their pitching going to hold up? They're finally healthy in the lineup. What's their pitching going to look like? So I'll throw it to you, Kenny. Rangers Orioles.
This is probably of the four series the one that I'm looking forward to watching the most. Just because one, it's always fun to get new blood. It's always fun to get new teams involved, and not have the same old every year in the American League. Yeah, we know the Yankees and the Red Sox are usually in the mix, and but it's nice to see some new teams sort of break through and sort of establish that they could be on the verge of making a run and being a team that we talk about, that really asserts themselves into the conversation on a year in year out basis. And this series comes down to youthful exuberance versus hot bats and managerial experience to me. When you look at the Orioles, this team is, we talked about them earlier in the year and how they were playing, and man, this feels like this is really early. It's ahead of schedule. Adley Rutschman was supposed to be sort of the piece that sort of kicked off maybe a turnaround, maybe them trending in an upward direction when he was ready to come to the major league level, but they just keep adding pieces from them. They keep adding pieces. These young players, they come in, they plug and play. Gunnar Henderson has been a revelation for this team, coming up and having the impact he's had on the major league level, so young and early in his career. They've got pieces in their bullpen. They've got pieces in that rotation that have contributed. So this is a team that just feels like it might be early, but they might be right on time in terms of really opening a window, similar to what we saw the Astros years ago when all their young players, when Springer and Altuve and Correa and all these guys sort of came of age at the same time and then opened up a real championship window for them to compete and win. Maybe that's where the Orioles are. I know that community is going to be rocking, that stadium's going to be rocking, but it's going to be tough because one of the things that we've seen with the Rangers is that lineup got healthy at just the right time. Seager's back and swinging a hot bat. We know what Marcus Semion's done all year. Adolis Garcia came back right before the postseason, and he's swinging a hot bat. He was mashing pitchers in that wild card series. So Josh Young has been amazing for them as a rookie this year. So they have any of the four teams left in the American League, they might have the most dangerous lineup outside of what the Astros sort of kind of bring to the table. And also one of the key factors in the entire postseason is having Bruce Bochy as your manager with all that World Series experience, all that postseason experience, having a guy who can push the right buttons at the right time. That could pay huge dividends for the Rangers in this series and maybe going beyond. So it's going to be fun, man. This is going to be, I expect this to be a 5-game series. I expect it to be back and forth. I expect both these teams to play well, and it's going to be fun.
It's definitely one that I will be keeping a close eye on. It'll be exciting. And the next one, you got the Twins and the Astros. I don't have any love for the Astros. I think that's been pretty clear anytime we have to talk about them, but I begrudgingly respect what they've done under Dusty Baker. And, hey, they showed that they're still the defending champs. They still have to be beaten. You go through them and knock them out. Now, the Twins, they were pretty convincing in the two games they won in the wild card. So it's interesting to me. On paper, they look actually surprisingly evenly matched. When I look at it, I don't really see any glaring holes in comparison. But I don't know. I think if the Twins were to win this, it would be considered a big upset. So I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this series is going to definitely come down to pitching. We know what the Astros staff has been. We know what they're going to get from the likes of Christian Javier and Framber Valdez. Now having Justin Verlander back in the mix, I think he's taking the ball in game one. It's always going to come down to pitching in this series. Same thing with the Twins. If Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray are going to pitch at the top of the Twins rotation the way they've done, the way they did in this first two in that wild card series, and the way they've kind of pitched for the Twins down the stretch, they're going to be difficult to deal with. And in the other underrated aspect of this series, whose bullpen is going to step up and sort of help shut the door in these games that are probably going to be tight and come down the stretch. We know, and what's funny is, to me, I think in that respect, I give the Twins a little bit of an edge because I love what Griffin Jax and Yohan Duran present in terms of the eighth and ninth inning for the Twins. So if the Twins can sort of kind of play from the front and have a lead going into the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, they can throw Emilio Pagan at you. They can throw Kenta Maeda at you from out of the bullpen. Chris Paddock is probably going to be a guy that if a pitcher gets in trouble in the 4th or 5th inning, they can use him as a bridge to get to the back end of their bullpen. So I think this series might be closer than people are expecting. They're going to need some guys in their lineup outside of Carlos Correa to actually do something. They're going to need Max Kepler. They're going to need that rookie Royce Lewis, who is going to just DH and just hopefully just mash and aim for the Crawford boxes when they get to Houston. But that's what it's going to come down to. Can the Twins hit enough and get the game to the back end of their bullpen? And that's where they might be able to find a way to win this series. But yeah, when you look at the Astros experience, when you look at, as much as we hate the Astros for the cheating and all the stuff that from the previous era, yeah, Altuve and Bregman are still there, but they've got a lot of dudes on this team who had nothing to do with that run that are key contributors, like Jordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker, Jose Abreu coming over from the White Sox, Chas McCormick. There's a masher in that lineup. Jeremy Pena is a superstar in the making as shortstop. So this team is still loaded, but they're going to have to hit, because if they hit any dry spells in this series and then you have to deal with the back end of that Twins bullpen, it might be trouble for the Astros.
Yeah. And before we move on, one thing I will say regarding Kenta Maeda, when he's come in out of the bullpen previously in the playoffs, he was just locked down, shut down, and you basically just counted 6 to 9 outs right there, just bam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that Houston knows very well, because he did it against them in 2017. So, but with that, we'll move on to the National League, and the first game for the National League is a 3 p.m. start. That's Philly at Atlanta. These two divisional rivals know each other very, very well. They beat up on each other. Might have been the other way around, but one-sided a little bit. But still, I mean, looking at it, you've got a team with flair, a team that believes it can play that underdog role and come in and swoop in and just beat you up when you're not ready. In the Phillies, it's funny to call them the underdog considering how much money they spent trying to put this roster together. But I mean, when you're facing this Atlanta team that a couple years ago just came out of nowhere and said, well, these are our pieces and you can't deal with it. And it was no doubt what was going to happen. Now, interesting. One of the things you mentioned before we got on, and I know you'll elaborate on it, and I agree, was game one's going to be huge. You do not want to be down 1-0. Phillies or Braves, if you're down 1-0, you're chasing something that's going to be hard to get. Even with Acuna just mashing and one of the favorites for the MVP. I'm not going to dub him the favorite. And just kind of see how that goes. It's one where I think it's going to go the full 5. I really do. Philly, I don't think is really going to give up or give in. This is a grudge match in many ways. I think it'll go 5, but I do think Atlanta's going to come out on top. They're just a little deeper.
Well, here's what I'll say. In one regard, you're absolutely right. The Braves have beat up on everybody, including the Phillies this year. But when you listen to what a lot of those Phillies players were saying coming out of this wild card round, how they handled business against the Marlins, and how confident they are. If you ask the Phillies, they'll tell you you can take all those divisional titles and you can shove them in a sack. Because when it counts, y'all got to come get us. Because y'all won 100+ games last year, and we took you out to the woodshed in Philly in game 3 and 4 and outscored you 17-4 and sent y'all packing and sent y'all home. So in a lot of respects, the Phillies truly believe that the pressure is on the Braves here because of the historic season that you've had. We come in here and this thing goes back to Philly 1-1. You guys are in the same position you were last year, being in a position of having to press and chase the series with all the pressure on your back. And while I do agree that the Braves are the deeper team, in some respects, this Phillies team, as they showed last year, they're not a team that's built for the regular season. They're more built for the postseason because this is a lineup that's built to boop and blast. You add Trey Turner to the mix, who's going to be a terror on the bases if he gets on and cause those Braves pitchers problems if you can get him on. Nick Castellanos is a double waiting to happen every time he comes to the plate. Bryce Harper has a penchant and a knack for dramatic moments in these spots, and they've got enough in terms of their starting pitchers in Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola and Ranger Suarez to really make life difficult. And they have the pieces left. They have lefty righties they can match up in the bullpen to try to kind of slow this Braves historic offense down. So with that being said, yes, of course, the Braves offense drew comparisons to the 1927 Yankees this year. You'd be a fool if you had to put your money on anybody other than them to come out and win this series. But the funny thing about the postseason and how it is set up now, where you run into these divisional matchups in the divisional round, best of 5, is there is such a slim margin of error. If you don't handle business right out of the gate and you drop the first game and lose home field advantage, my goodness, things can get interesting very quickly. That's why, to me, in my opinion, I think whoever wins game one in a lot of respects might win this entire series. If the Braves come out and do what they've done all year and take the Phillies to the woodshed in game one, they might sweep this thing. But if the Phillies come out and win this, all the pressure mounts on the Braves. So it is definitely going to be fun. I think it's going to be a long series. I think that the Phillies are built to give, of all the teams outside of the Dodgers in the National League, I think the Phillies are just sort of kind of built to give this team issues, and it's going to be fun. It'll be fun to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be an interesting one to watch. I agree with all your points. I do kind of go back to, this lineup is almost like a murderer's row in Atlanta. So that is a big factor for me. Just kind of looking at it. But on that note, I'm gonna switch gears. We've got the nightcap, the fourth and final series, the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers, another divisional matchup. The Diamondbacks were a team that everybody was talking about. They were the hot pick earlier in the season, and they couldn't sustain what they were doing. Kudos to them. They put it back together and took advantage of the Giants and Padres falling apart and made the playoffs. So that is, good for them. Corbin Carroll, I do not want to see him terrorizing anybody on the bases, but I'm going to have to deal with him. Keep him off base first. The question mark for the Dodgers is their rotation. For a moment, you thought you had 3 starters going in and a couple of rookies you might lean on. And now you have 2, and now you have 1. Rios, I'm just going to leave it there. I don't even want to touch that situation with a 10-foot pole. He's already been scrubbed. And I will say, it's almost rightfully so at this point. And then Lance Lynn on bereavement. We don't know how long that's going to be. I haven't seen any update on him as far as game 1 or the beginning of the series. And if he's not in at the beginning, he's out for the DS. So that leaves Kershaw and some openers and a bullpen and rookies. So it is definitely an interesting mix to look at in that sense. But I need to look and see who they've put on this postseason roster. Behind Kershaw, you've got Bobby Miller. He had a great season. Emmett Sheehan started to kind of figure it out. Like, if they can get 4 solid innings out of Sheehan, I'll take it at this point. And then after that, you trust your bullpen will kind of do things. Ryan Pepio showed flashes. So it's going to be a mishmash on the mound. We know what that lineup's going to give you. Mookie, Freddie, Will Smith. Like 1, 2, 3, they're going to try to cause all kinds of havoc. And then it's just professional hitting for most of the rest of that lineup. But again, what are they going to have on the mound? It's all question marks for me after Kershaw, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, this is probably going to be the first postseason where realistically you're looking at the Dodgers and thinking that the offense will have to carry the way, because there's just so many questions in terms of what they're going to put on the bump and who's going to be able to kind of bridge the games to to the bullpen. This might just be a postseason where they're gonna have to mash their way through. Now, the danger in that is when you look at a team like Arizona, it does give you vibes of what you dealt with San Diego last year to a large degree, because of the fact that, and I know I can attest to this firsthand, San Diego fought and scratched and clawed to get into the postseason. They took the trip to New York in that wild card series. They slapped the Mets around in 2 straight, and then they carried Big Uncle Mo right into that Dodger series, and we saw how that sort of played out. When you look at what Arizona had to go through down the stretch, and like you said, they got off to that great start. They were in first place for for a nice cup of coffee at the beginning of the season, as the Dodgers were sort of kind of figuring their things out. They kind of fell out. They kind of, not only did they fall out of first place, but then they sort of kind of fell out of the playoff chase on the outside looking in for a good part of the summer, worked their way back into it, picked up a little momentum. The Tommy Pham trade was a big boost for that team. That sort of kind of helped them kind of keep treading in the water to kind of stay in that mix with Miami and Philly and Chicago and some of those teams. And the seminal point in their season was they had a big 4-game series a couple of weeks before the end of the regular season with Chicago, where essentially we knew those were the 2 teams that were fighting for that spot outside of Miami. And Arizona kind of put together a playoff type performance in that series against the Cubs, which essentially sent the Cubs reeling and positioned Arizona to get in. And then you look at what they did in this 2-game set with Milwaukee, where they fell behind both games and then turned it on and put the Brewers away, when we thought that the Brewers' strength would be their pitching, and the timely hitting of the D-backs just kind of sort of won the day. An interesting name to kind of pay attention to in this series is Ketel Marte. We've talked a lot about Corbin Carroll, and rightfully so, because he's the real deal. He's going to be he's going to be the all-star that represents the Diamondbacks in the all-star game for the next decade. But Ketel Marte quietly has put together a really good season after a couple of lackluster years where he was injured, and everybody forgets that he was before there was a Corbin Carroll, he was the guy. He was the guy that everybody was making up trade scenarios like, how can we get Ketel Marte out of that wasteland in the desert and onto our team, because he was Mookie before Mookie in terms of playing in the outfield, playing center field, then going to play second base, and then short, and then right, and all his other places. And his bat has sort of kind of woken up here, and we saw it in the postseason where he hit a bomb in, I think, the first game of that series, and he hit some ropes. So I think he and Christian Walker might be the only 2 guys that are still on that roster from the last time they made the playoffs in 2017. And when they got to watch the Dodgers jump in the pool, let's not forget about all that. How crazy that scenario was. But you got 2 veterans that have been there for a long time, that are sort of kind of anchoring that team around Corbin Carroll. But again, the question for Arizona is, outside of Zach Gallen, who in that rotation or coming out of that bullpen really scares you if you're the Dodgers? The Dodgers should still slap them around and hit the ball and shouldn't have any issue putting up offense, and it'll be a question of if Arizona can kind of keep up. So I'm fully expect the Dodgers to be able to still, even with the question marks in the rotation, still be able to win this series kind of going away. But they're going to have to bring their A game, because hopefully there are enough guys who remember what it felt like watching San Diego celebrate last year in the divisional series, that they kind of take this series a little don't take that you're playing the D-backs for granted and not the Brewers, and then go handle business in this divisional series.
You have to have learned from last year if you're the Dodgers, because last year it was like, oh, we're playing the Padres, the baby brothers that we slap around all the time, and then just crap the bed. I don't anticipate that'll be the case this year, but that's why you play the game. So, but it's going to be an interesting division series. There are 4 really interesting matchups. Obviously, we know the one I'm really excited about. But I'm rooting for the Twins and the Phillies. I mean, as much as I want the Dodgers to beat the Braves on the way to the World Series, I'm a Bryce Harper fan. I've loved Harper since he was a high schooler on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So for me, that's where I stand.
So let's hold our feet to the fire here, and let's
I
pick
was
some winners.
I was just about to say the same thing to you, because what's the point in doing this if we're not gonna go on the record? So I say we just do the DS, and then when we preview the championship series, we'll preview the winners, and then we'll do it that way. So for me, since I segued in and I set it all up, I will jump right in. And again, I'm going to start from morning to night. I'm going Orioles over Rangers. My heart is going to talk for the next one. I'm going Twins over Astros. You kind of talked me into it. As much as that goes, and now I'm second guessing again. I'm gonna go Braves over Phillies. Almost got talked into going Phillies over Braves. Then I'll do Dodgers over Diamondbacks. Now, if we're doing tiebreaker, I think Rangers and Orioles goes 5. Twins and Astros goes 5. Braves and Phillies goes 4. D-backs and Dodgers goes 4.
Okay. So I'll start in the American League. Orioles, Rangers. I think this series is going to be fun. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun sitting up late at night and watching these games because as dads do, we have to find the time to sit there and watch all this baseball. So, but this I have a feeling this is a series that I won't have a problem sitting up late, sitting there and watching. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be back and forth. I think these teams, in terms of what they present, I think the Rangers have the better lineup, but I think the Orioles have the better bullpen and if they can get the game to their bullpen. But I think the X factor in this series is the guy that I brought up when we were kind of previewing the series, and it's Bruce Bochy. I think this thing goes 5, and I think Bruce Bochy will push the right button at the right time and find a way to get the Rangers through. So I'm going to go Rangers over O's, even though I'm definitely rooting for the O's. I think this team is fun. I would love for the Orioles to be relevant again. Baseball's always fun when some of those legacy franchises are relevant. But I'm going to go Rangers over O's. I think the O's are almost there. I think this series will be a learning experience for them to take into 2024. But we're going to go Rangers in 5. I think in the other ALDS matchup, this one I've waffled because I think whichever team can get it to their bullpen is going to be the team that wins the series. And for me, I think the Twins may be able to do just enough because they have the ace in the hole. Joan Duran has been unhittable coming out of that bullpen. The guy throws 103, but then can snap off a 90-mile-an-hour curveball that's unhittable. I watched him torture the Blue Jays in the ninth inning in games 1 and 2, where once he came into the game, you just knew it was over. There was nothing they could do. I think that the Twins will be able to get the game to him at least twice, maybe 3 times, and I'm going to give them the edge in 4 games. But I feel, but even though I'm saying Twins in 4, this series could easily be Astros in 4 if a couple things happen the opposite way. But I'm just going because baseball is just fickle that way. The postseason is fickle that way. But I'm going to hold myself to the fire. I'm going to go Twins in 4. In the National League, man, again, like we talked about last year this time, hate watching at its best because two franchises, if both of these teams could end in a dead draw and neither one of them advance, that'd be where I'd go with Braves and Phillies. But someone's got to win. Either way, I'm going to hate it. But I will say, this Braves offense has been something that the last team in my lifetime I can remember having an offense like this was the 98 Yankees. That 98 Yankees team that just ran through everybody, won 108 games, went through the postseason. The World Series against San Diego was basically a formality to crown them. That's how dominant this team has been this year. I don't know. I don't think that it stops. I think the Phillies will give them a run at it, but I'm going to go Braves in 4. In the other series, I like Corbin Carroll. I do. I like Ketel Marte. I do. I like Christian Walker. I like pieces on this team. I like Zach Gallen, even though he's the junk baller. He's the modern time Jamie Moyer, if you ever seen him. Guy feels like he throws 60 miles an hour out there, but somehow finds a way to get outs. But I don't think they have much in their rotation that's really going to slow down Mookie and Freddie in this lineup. I think the Dodgers are going to just kind of BP this team and bash their way through this NLDS, and then they'll have to figure some things out when they get to the NLCS. But that'll be a conversation for when they get there. I'm gonna go Dodgers in 3. I think the Dodgers are going to sweep them. That might sound boisterous, but I just don't think that I think the difference between the Dodgers and the Brewers is that the Brewers left a lot to be desired offensively, where you knew they were going to have to lean on Corbin Burns and they were going to have to lean on that pitching staff to try to piece their way through the postseason. That's not the Dodgers. The Dodgers, the questions we have with their rotation is, can you keep the other team from putting up numbers, because we know what we're going to do offensively. And that's going to be the key to this series. I don't think the D-backs will be able to hit the Dodgers, and I think the Dodgers are going to get them out of there in quick work. So Dodgers in 3, Braves in 4, Twins in 4, and Rangers over Orioles in 5. Those are my picks.
Spicy as always. It's exciting. It is. And I mean, I just can't wait for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, man, thank everybody for supporting us. We do this because these are conversations, like I said, we have anyway. So you guys being a fly on the wall of these conversations that we have amongst our senior staff is always appreciated for your support. So continue to watch us, leave a like, subscribe, and we're going to keep dropping these, man. We're going to drop them as the postseason continues. We're going to drop them on everything. So thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for watching, and keep sharing the love, because that's basically all we're about here. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.